intent is for something different, we need to change the language.
I believe that was the intent, to go back to the county.
That's right. And the county
Thanks
can
for bringing that
decide
up.
that's right. The county can decide to retain that member or appoint somebody new.
Because the appointment was made by one of the 5 counties, member counties, I don't think he's right, we can't remove, we can only recommend.
All right. And the only other thing I had was Article 6, Section 3, special meetings. I don't know if the intent is really 3% of the directors, but 3% of the directors is 1. So
Sorry.
one member could call for a special meeting.
So, thank you. The original wording was 10%, and the attorney recommended changing it to 3, but she didn't take the percent out, so I'm glad you caught that.
Ah, okay. That makes more sense.
Yep. Her brief statement was 10% of 30 is 3, put it in. So. Okay, Ron, sorry.
No, fine. Just a housekeeping thing. It would seem to me if we're going to recite in the document something like, for example, under 12, Article 18 of the General Municipal Law, I think that perhaps we should put an affixed here too as Appendix 1. You shouldn't have to go chase it. If it's in our bylaws and we're referencing it, it should be. And the same thing with Article 6 of the POL. It's a very simple matter just to say an affixed here too as Appendix 2. And then where it says procurements, if we're going to comply with GML Sections 103 and 104, and affixed here too as Appendix 3. So that way it's all in one spot, so anybody that picks up the bylaws reads that and then just goes to the appendix as opposed to, now if there's a reason that they're not there, maybe they are extensive, I don't know.
I think Chris popped up for a reason.
Yeah, that gets dangerous in New York because they amend stuff all the time. So the state legislature, in their infinite wisdom, is going to amend those, and then we would have to go to all 5 counties to amend the bylaws to update the appendices. So that's why we typically just reference statute, because you can't trust New York to not monkey with it.
I got it.
Does not make sense.
Not at all.
Just seems to me more convenient to have it.
No, I don't disagree with you. And so what you could probably do is, in practice, like when you give it to a new board member, include that behind it, but you don't want it to actually be part of the document because then you can't change it.
I tend to agree. It's a good idea, Ron. I believe that's in case, but this is an exceptional case, I should say. So not many people have 5 counties that have to ratify things, and to chase these things around, it would be pretty tough.
So our practice will be that those documents will be, when this is distributed, they will be distributed as well.
That's correct. That's correct. So anything else?
There was something we were talking about we never decided on. I can't remember what it was now. Somebody brought up and we were talking about something, and we talked about 2 things we never decided what the change was. All right, can't tell you which one.
That's approval of the budget. So it doesn't happen very often.
Correct.
So I wanted this on the record. I agree with Mr. Half.
Wow.
Danny, you better leave now.
That's
It won't happen again.
Right.
All the time, but it's in secret.
I know.
It's the budget, yeah.
So I'm doing this one on the record. It is that budget part. And the reason I raised that is that we actually had this discussion with our Ag Planning Committee yesterday in Washington County. And Mary stepped out, but I believe it's in 239H. It says that once the Regional Planning Board is created, the 5 participating counties need to enter into an MOA that governs the operation of it and the participation of the 5 counties. My recommendation would be that the language in the bylaws reads, each county shall make its contribution pursuant to the adopted MOA entered into by the 5 counties. Okay. And then within that document, because that one will be a little bit more nimble, we'll spell out a formula. And what I kicked around with the Ag Planning Board yesterday, Ag Planning Committee yesterday, was in Washington County, we divvy up sales tax with our towns based on a mixed formula of total assessed valuation and population. and that may be a good way within the 5 counties to divvy up the relative shares. But again, I think that's a conversation that can happen outside of the bylaws.
Yep.
So maybe if we just change that reference to the adopted budget to the MOA approved by the 5 counties.
Well, Beth's making the note. Any other comments?
That's good, I like that.
So what I would ask, he's still scribbling. What I would ask Beth to do, because I can't read her writing, is go back and talk about the changes made so we all know what they are.
Sure. Page 2. Article 4. Oh, I'm sorry, Article 3, county membership, what we just discussed. The annual budget share conversation will change to reference the MOAs that were signed by each county. And approved by the 5 counties, yep. Article 4, Section 3, tenure. This may be one of the things that Ron referenced that we didn't discuss. The first appointment should be staggered. Is that something that we want in there? Okay. So that will be in there. Section 8, voting rights. I heard a comment about making it more clear what establishes a quorum, so maybe just defining that a little bit better. Article 5, officers. Section 1, officers. It's okay if the secretary and the treasurer can be ex officio members. I've moved on to page 5. The very top, what would started as attendance on the previous page, I believe Mr. Half asked to have just 3 consecutive times turn to 3 regularly scheduled meetings. And is everyone okay with that change? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Moving to the bottom of the page, Article 6, Section 3, special meetings can be called within a 5-day notice, and also taking out the percent reference, so it's 3 people, not 3%. Page 6, the top, Section 5, quorum, taking out the provided that each county comprising the LCLGRPB has a representative at said meeting, so that was the conversation about not one person from every county having to be present to conduct business. What's that?
Should we add the fact that 8 members? 8 is the number?
Well, it says majority of the voting direct. You want me to put the number 8 in there?
Makes it very clear if you put
Okay.
down 8.
Yep. And then the very last page, page 8, Article 16, the amendments. Special meeting of the board by 2/3 of the vote, making sure that you put eligible voting members in there is what constitutes the 2/3. And that all amendments also have to be approved by the 5 counties.
Did we miss anything?
Okay, good.
Richie?
Not anything is missed, but if you go back to page 6 on the quorum, the last sentence, it says vote by proxy, unanimous written to consent, teleconference is not permitted. Should we bold that?
Bold, we can bold teleconference. Yes, we can bold that if you'd
The
like.
whole sentence?
Yeah, we can bold that whole thing.
So there's
No
doubt
problem with that.
Anybody's mind going forward.
Good point. Okay, everyone comfortable with this? Now, if everyone's comfortable, I'd entertain a motion to adopt the bylaws as we discussed, and Beth has the official record now. Motion by Dennis?
Contingent on approval by each of the counties?
Yes. Good point. Good point. So Dennis, second by John Frey. Any other further discussion? Claudia?
Thank you. Do you have a super majority right now?
Yes. Look at the cards in front of them. They're color-coded.
I can't tell. Oh, they're color-coded. Okay.
Yes.
Good vote.
Yes.
That's very good.
Yes. That was for my benefit.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to establish that. All in favor?
Aye.
Should do a roll call.
Let's do a roll call.
Rodney Brown,
Yes.
Pete Keenan,
Yes.
Charles Harrington,
Yes.
Ron Jackson,
Yes.
John Fry,
Yes.
Dennis Dickinson,
Yes.
Edna Frazier,
Yes.
John Strauss,
Yes.
Matthew Hicks,
Yes.
Richard Moore,
Yes.
David O'Brien.
Yes. Good. We got bylaws to send to the counties for approval, so
Good job.
we will get a letter out to each county chair, so we have official notice. Thank you. The next is we have some policies we looked at. We really have we refer to adopt to the policies of the Warren County. In discussions with people, they really feel we should have our own policies and establish that. So this is just the first of going forward. There's still a lot of the policies to put in place, but these all were ones that we looked as being important, such as procurement policy, sexual harassment, video conferencing policy, investment policy, violence in the workplace, ethics, and electronic banking. Now, we didn't go back to the drawing board and start from scratch. We did take several counties and look at them and figure out which ones were best suited for the planning board. So how would you like to do this? We'd like to go through them one by one, starting with the procurement policy.
I'd rather start with the ethics. With our past history, I think that sends the message we want to send.
It's okay with me. Ethics
I
policy.
didn't hear that.
Pardon?
I didn't hear that.
We're going to start with the ethics policy.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Sure.
Any questions, comments? John?
Well, the only thing that I have when I read through it is I would like to be able to look at the financial disclosure form so that it would fit in better with our policy.
Mhm.
And that would be easy to do because it does require us to file a financial disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
And it does have the criteria of A, B, C, D, E, F, like many of our county financial
Mhm.
disclosures already have. I don't know if that's absolutely necessary. It just would have made me more comfortable seeing the form and making sure it was in agreement with our policy. But
Do we want to adopt the policy and then get the form out? I mean, I think I agree with Ron. This is a very important thing to deal with. And the form will pretty well follow what we have in here. So if everyone else is comfortable with that? Do we have any comments on that, on the ethics policy?
I have a note. Mr. Jackson emailed and asked that in Section 2, Definitions I, relative, that some additional types of relatives were added, so it would read relative means a spouse or child, parent, grandparent, brother or sister of an RPB officer, employee, or appointed official or their spouse. So originally I believe it just said child.
I guess I wish we had Mary's response, but I think if we go by ethics law, I don't think that unless a child lives with you or brother and sister depends on you or depends on financial support, they're included in the GML. I'm just reaching back from memory. I do know that in our RLF management policy, there's another section regarding loan policies that talks about interested parties, and in those interested parties, it specifies the people that he talked about. It specifies they don't even have to live with you.
Correct.
Brothers, sisters, anyone else in our loan management plan, approved by EDA. So the question is, do we want to take that one step farther, or do we want to stay with the ethics as comes out of GML? Open discussion.
I'd rather expand than shrink.
Mhm.
It's, once again, sending more of a message.
I don't have a problem with that.
Wanted to see us
We can't see you. I can't see you, but people in the public can see you. I should say that.
Yeah, we can't see the committee any longer, and you can't see us either?
Right.
It's gone off the screen.
Sorry?
Not
You
on
can't
the
see
screen
us.
anymore.
Okay.
And more important that you can see us than we can see you.
That's correct. So I have no problem adding it. Is that all right with everyone? Everyone concur?
Yes.
Yeah, either way is fine.
Okay. Anything else? So with that,
I'll move it.
Ron moves the ethics policy. Do I have a second? Dennis Dickinson? Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Next is procurement policy. Reviewed this. We pulled this from the best of some organizations such as this, LDCs. We looked at LDCs, we looked at IDAs, we looked at planning boards, and came up with this procurement policy. We felt that the depth that the county policies went in really didn't apply here, so that's why we chose this model. And I open up for discussion.
I have a couple items.
Wonderful.
On the title, instead of Development Corporation, should that be Planning Board?
Yes.
It actually was changed in this version I got in front of me. Thank you.
Okay. And it refers to agency throughout the document. I think we should probably add agency as a definition referring to the Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board.
No problem with that.
And lastly, in Section 4A, it lists inhabitants of Hamilton County. I think that should be changed to the 5-county Regional Planning Board area.
You are correct. Anyone, anything else? Richie?
Dave, on page, not page, but on the procurement guidelines, section 3,
Okay.
A number 2, sub 2, all purchase contracts involving an expenditure more than 20,000. Maybe for this, I would suggest that we cut that down to 10,000. The reason being is the amount of budget they can have, they can, that's great, they know that they're not going to.
Do I have concurrence?
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Nothing else? I'd like a motion to adopt this with the changes we discussed. John Stroh moved it. Do I have a second?
Second.
Richie Moore. All in favor?
Aye.
Sexual harassment policy. Do we have any comments? John?
Just one for now, that the policy that we're adopting now will have to be re-reviewed once the Department of Labor releases its updates, which is supposed to happen any day now. I sent an email to them asking them for them, and they said they're not ready yet, but they'll be forthcoming. So when I receive them, we'll review this policy and update it accordingly. The policy's fine now, but I'm just saying we're going to have to update it in the very near future.
Any other comments? Like a
I
motion?
have one minor comment.
Yes, go ahead. Rodney?
I apologize if I'm stepping in front of somebody.
Nope.
On elected officials' responsibilities, B, I think you need to delete the words direct report.
Okay. Okay. Everyone concur with that? Without any other comments, I'd like to entertain a motion to pass this. Edna, do I have a second? Dennis? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next one is video conferencing policy. We incorporated in the bylaws the capability to do video conferencing. So, this just spells out what it shall be conducted, the policies, we take care of that. So, were there any comments on this one? No comments, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the video conferencing policy.
So moved.
Was that Pete?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second? Yeah, Edna, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next one is investment policy. We're getting down there.
Yep.
Investment policy, any comments on the investment policy?
I have one. Again, in the title, unless it's been changed, it says for the counties of Warren and Washington Industrial Development Agency instead of the Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board.
Okay, good catch. Any other comments? Entertain a motion to accept them.
Move to accept Pete again.
John Fry and Dennis Dickinson, second. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried. Two more, and we're done with these. Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board, Workplace Violence Prevention Program. John Stroh was kind enough to, because he's been working on it, to get that information updated.
I'm too familiar with it.
Do you have any comments, John?
No, I think we have one that is entirely up to date, and I highlighted the other items of the workplace violence policy that are a program that are things that we need to do.
Mhm.
Because it's not just to adopt a policy, there's a program you have
Mhm.
to do. And the same thing with the sexual harassment too. Okay?
Okay. Any other comments? Entertain a motion. John, second by, do I have second? Second by Edna. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are looking at electronic banking policy. A lot of our information is done by Glens Falls National, and it's easier to get in there and look at that information and wait for them to send stuff to us. That is the primary reason for that. And we have all our funds there, and we get weekly reports on loans and weekly reports on what takes place. So talking with Beth, it would be easier to have that information electronically where she can catch up and look at it so we can make sure we're catching everything. So I will entertain comments on the electronic banking policy.
I have a couple.
Yes.
Again, it lists the agency, but it doesn't say who the agency is. I think we just should make clear that right up front that the Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board is the agency.
Mm-hmm.
And under scope, it says that the electronic banking activities will be used for. I don't know if that's the intent or if we should change that to may to give them the flexibility of using other methods as well.
Excellent point. Any other comments? I'll entertain a motion to adopt it. John Stroh?
As amended?
As amended, correct. Sorry. So motion by John, second by Dennis. I see you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good. So am I on the right? Okay, we're through the policies. There's an authorities budget officer update, budget office update. Beth, could you give that, please?
Sure. So I filed all of the authorization paperwork with the State Comptroller's Office. We are now set up in the ABO system. I have activated our account. So at this point, as we move forward with the RDC, that information will begin, as we get it, being uploaded into the AVO system. That's where we are.
Economic Development Authority, we did have a conference call. Yes.
I'm sorry to just jump back. Was that AVO filing for both the regional planning board and the...
It's only the development court.
Regional Planning
The planning board itself is
Exempt.
exempt. Correct. Economic Development Authority, they are the ones that govern the loan, are the oversight of loans for the RLF programs we have. We got a call from them saying they see some they've seen some information in the paper. They just want to check the progress, what happened, where we're going. We had the conversation. They were satisfied with the answer that we gave them. We have set a target for having another call with them in about 60 days. We told them that we were looking at reviewing the loan process. They were concerned about having a moratorium on the loans. We told them the reason why the loan process needed to be looked at. We had a change in leadership. We needed to look at the entire process. So they were comfortable that we're moving forward, that it wasn't something else that was happening. So they talked about this. We'll have a conference call in 60 days. Hopefully we'll have some information to share with them, especially loan process, new bylaws, everything else. So that was a conversation there. I did send out, which we will not talk about today, is there's been questions about what loans we give, why we give those loans, and what parameters are given. We send out the RLF management plan, which is a revolving loan fund management plan. We're not going to talk about that today. There's too much in there. But I would ask people who have questions to get that document, review that document, because it covers the parameters of the loans, why the loans are given. There was a comment I saw about Title IX. I still have not found a reference in any of the loan programs to Title IX. So I don't know where Marvin Company got that. I will get that information to find out where they got it. There may be some abstract thing in the USDA loan programs. I don't know. But, but you can read the parameters of it. I would really suggest some really dedicated reading to look at that. So the loan process review. They were looking for a target date to get the moratorium on the loans lifted. I said we get back to them when you have the loan process in place. Best we can give them. We found out that every time there's a change in leadership, we need to notify at least 2 people to the EDA. So we did send out, there was some risk analysis, some rating from the revolving loan fund. I just passed out that information. I can't 100% guarantee the accuracy of that information because I haven't researched it all, but that's what the information they've gotten because we have to report to them every quarter in a form which you will see. Collection process, we need to put an effort in the collection process. We have some loans that are need to be encouraged. I think that one thing we did say is that we have $360,000 of potential write-offs. Why they haven't written off is because there's still collections available on those. We have assets that we need to collect under UCCs, so we're pursuing those, and our attorneys are pursuing those. So when we do, we'll look at it, and we will report back on the status of those on the next meeting. Next item was, any questions? Next item was the MOU of understanding with AGFTC. This was brought up last meeting. We sent it out for you to review. Basically, this is not the host agency agreement. The host agency agreement is in place. It's in there for 10 years. And I'm not sure what the date was, last date was signed. Do you remember, Aaron, for the host agency? 2012. 2012, so we got another, whatever the years are. This is simply an agreement, how we're going to operate, what each party's responsibilities are. So I would like to open that up for discussion. I am glad that both Beth and Aaron have had some good discussions about how we can interact and potentially interact and improve both agencies' operations all the way up to sharing services. We are potentially looking at sharing a senior account clerk, which Beth will talk about in a minute. We are losing our secretary, as well as Walter's only there to help with the audit process. He's been very valuable answering questions that other people really don't know. So that's the limit of his involvement. So Beth will talk about that, and I'm rambling a little bit. So anyhow, let's get back to the MOU. Is there any questions on the MOU? I would entertain a motion to approve the MOU.
You want a motion to approve the MOU with AGTFC?
AGFTC, correct.
Sorry about that. I'll make the motion, though. It's in limbo now. I mean, is it in effect? You just want to reconfirm it with a new board?
I will let Aaron...
It's basically a reaffirmation of standing policy. We're taking the opportunity to refresh it.
Okay.
It's an overarching effort to improve the government.
Right. I'll make the motion, David.
Motion by Matt. Do I have a second? Second by Edna. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
John?
Recuse?
Pardon?
I'm going to recuse.
Yes. Reason John's recusing because he's a signatory for the AGFTC. For your information, Beth provided information on different projects that have been happening. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else in my mind I was supposed to cover. I don't think so. At this point, anyone else got any of the comments on what we've covered so far? If not, I'd like to turn it over to Aaron to do a presentation. I think it's more of an update where he's at. I think a lot of people know what he does, but...
There's a lot of what we do. Feel free to usher me along if you see fit. Chairman O'Brien asked for an update on the Transportation Council, its roles, responsibilities, its staffing, its operations. So just taking the opportunity to publicly remind both our members and our non-members of what it is that the Transportation Council does and what our affiliation is with the Planning Board. We are the metropolitan planning organization for the area that includes Warren County, Washington County, and northern Saratoga County. So we have one piece of Saratoga County, the town of Moreau, that we're responsible for transportation planning as well. MPOs are required by federal law to be established in urban areas that exceed 50,000 persons in population. That was established in 1962 as part of federal law and has been reaffirmed in subsequent transportation legislation since then, most recently the FAST Act of 2016. Despite us being federally funded, we're non-regulatory. We don't tell our municipalities and our participants what it is that they should be doing with their transportation resources. What we're trying to do is make those resources available to address municipal priorities. There's 14 MPOs in New York State. We are the third smallest with regard to overall size of the program. We have a fairly large geography for a small MPO, but the amount of program, both capital program and planning dollars that come into the area is at the lower end of the continuum, with New York City obviously being on the large side. Every single one of those 14 MPOs in New York State requires a host agency. So we're not unique in needing the Regional Planning Board to act as a municipal host. It's the way the Governor of New York established MPOs in New York. So every single one of them has a different host agency. There's one other one hosted by a Regional Planning Commission or board. The rest of them are hosted by transit agencies and counties or state DOT. And every single one of them is different. I can tell you that each MPO has kind of evolved as a function of their local culture. We're pretty well renowned for being very cooperative and agreeable. It's a good reputation to have when it comes to divvying up funding allocations. That often works in our favor. A little bit of organizational history. The council was originally formed in 1982 as the Glens Falls Transportation Council as a result of the 1980 census showing the urban area population of Glens Falls had exceeded 50,000. Originally, this organization was hosted by New York State DOT. The original programming emphasis was only on the Glens Falls urban area, so we had a relatively small voting membership. The planning and programming area was voted to be expanded in 1993 to include the surrounding counties in their entirety, plus the rural areas of Moreau. It's been told to me that The result of that effort was not commensurate with the effort that was put into it. Apparently that redesignation was a little bit clunky, but it got accomplished. Due to a desire to assert more responsibility, more local responsibility over the MPO process, that's when the host agency was shifted to the Regional Planning Board in 1998, away from the department. That was a local decision. A little bit about our structure and oversight. What you see there is a very strange looking census-defined shape. That is the statistical urban area for Glens Falls. So every municipality that's either entirely within that urban area or comes in contact with it has one vote on our policy committee. I've listed the voting members up there. So in both Warren County and Washington County, the chairman of the board has a vote. The chairman is allowed to appoint one rural town supervisor outside of the urban area. Every urban area municipality, either town or village, that chief elected official has one vote. Department of Transportation is usually, the commissioner is represented by what's usually the regional director of Region 1. The Thruway Commissioner is also represented, and the Lake Champlain-Lake Regional Planning Board Chair has a vote. Welcome aboard, Chairman O'Brien, our newest voting member.
Thanks.
That committee meets roughly twice a year. It has oversight of the council and its responsibilities, including approval of the policies and plans and final documents. Our next meeting, if anyone's interested, will be in October, early October. Moving on to the planning committee. That's the same structure as the policy committee. Each municipality that's represented on the policy committee has one vote on the planning committee. In addition, the Greater Glens Falls Transit Director is also a voting member of the planning committee. That committee meets about 5 or 6 times a year, is responsible for overseeing the day-to-day operations of our staff and our consultant activities, reaffirming priorities as we move along through the course of the year. We need to change direction, start working on other options within our work program. That's the committee that makes those decisions. Historically, the policy committee has given a fairly wide range of decision-making authority to the planning committee, and I think that's a sound decision. You're leaving the practitioners, the highway superintendents, the planners, the folks that are familiar with the process in charge of the day-to-day operations. Our voting procedure is very simple. It's consensus, it's unanimous consensus of affected municipalities. If the decision that the Transportation Council makes impacts your municipality and you say no, and you're the only one to say no, that initiative doesn't go anywhere. So cooperation is key at the MPO, and we've been fortunate enough to have it over the course of our history. A little bit about our current staffing. We are at 2 full-time equivalents right now. That's about as lean as we want to run. We do have some experience with staff. The 2 of us combined for about 37 years. As Chairman O'Brien noted, we are interested in pursuing some staff sharing relationships. We have explored and some discussions to consider a part-time administrative assistant type person or clerk position. We've been talking with Beth pretty extensively about that. We also have a priority for adding a planning position. That was my vision when our administrative assistant left, was that I would take over those responsibilities and we would look to add a professional planner. I can't afford that, but I can afford it on a part-time basis. So I'm interested in pursuing that opportunity as well. Offices in Glens Falls, that's central to the core planning area. We are 100, about our funding, and this is important. You'll see that staff and payroll access is facilitated by Warren County. We are 100% federally reimbursed. So any costs associated with us will be paid back initially by the Department of Transportation of New York State, and they in turn get paid back by Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administration. That money comes from a small nationwide percentage takedown of the Highway Trust Fund, which is fueled by revenues from fuel taxes, as well as some small things like percentage sales taxes on truck tires and such. We run at a surplus at the moment. We carry over a little bit of FHWA money year to year. We can do that. It's not a use it or lose it scenario with Federal Highway Administration funds. Surplus isn't big enough for me to support that 3rd professional planner position full time, but it certainly could contribute to a part-time person, and we believe with some of these staff sharing scenarios that we've discussed with the Regional Planning Board that we can do more for you guys if we're able to affect some of these relationships. So what's required of us? This is the boring stuff that's in the federal law that we're supposed to do. All MPOs have to produce a long-range plan, which is a 20 to 25-year generalized articulation of regional goals and objectives, including financial projections, which are, in this particular climate, about as difficult to produce as one could imagine. We've also recently been saddled with performance measurement. This is a big emphasis of the federal transportation law. We are supposed to report statistically what the impact of our funding and our programming is on certain measurements like condition of bridges, condition of pavement, delay conditions for freight, truck travel time reliability. These are all being measured on a statewide basis, and we're being asked to contribute to those statewide measures. That's the long-range plan. The Transportation Improvement Program is what most of our sponsors are interested in. That's the listing of capital projects that we intend to fund over a 5-year window. That includes highways, bridges, public investments in public transit, investments in bicycle and pedestrian facilities. The Unified Planning Work Program at the bottom is our annual work program. That's the roster of things that basically we can do for you guys as staffing and access to consultants. So the long-range plan is under development. We'll have that before the Planning Committee in early August with hopes of Policy Committee consideration for adoption in October. We, lucky us, AGFTC, is the first of the long-range plans to be updated or amended in the era of performance measurement. So I expect an undue amount of federal scrutiny to be applied to our program. I expect a significant amount of difficulty in getting this plan passed, more so than in the past. I hope we're working with them to make it as smooth as possible, but we're basically the guinea pigs here. And some cooperation on the federal level has deteriorated recently, so we'll see how that goes. Transportation Improvement Program. This is our, again, the 5-year roster of capital projects. There's $118 million in the current TIP, including a number of significant state projects as well as many local projects that are near and dear to our county public works department. We are currently reviewing applications for $5.3 million of available dollars in local project set-asides for bridge improvements, pavement improvements, and bicycle and pedestrian facilities. We'll be sharing those applications with our planning committee in August. The TIP and the federal money leveraged by the TIP has lent itself well towards the implementation of several major projects throughout the past 20 years. You'll see a couple of biggies up there. Both local and state projects are included on that. We can't take exclusive responsibility for getting these projects done, but several of those projects would not have happened had they not had the consensus support of the voting membership of the MPO. We have no role in project implementation and project delivery. That's the responsibility of the sponsoring municipality, so it's the hard work of your DPW and planning departments that are getting these projects done. We're happy to be able to facilitate access to capital for those improvements. Next slide lists a number of significant structural improvements that have occurred over the last 20 years. Again, state and local projects are included here. A number of pretty significant bridges providing mobility over I-87, the Hudson River, the Medowee River, Vattenkill. These are all essential to regional access and mobility. And again, it's the public works departments that are getting these things done on your behalf. The UPWP, again, this is the annual work program. This is what we can do for us, or for you. The basic categories of work program activities that we solicit for on an annual basis are listed there. We do a lot of work in corridor and gateway studies. We have a pretty strong emphasis in the office on bicycle and pedestrian planning. It seems to constitute a lot of what we're being asked for as of late. We've got a pretty good experience doing some safety analyses, both on an intersection by intersection basis as well as on county level regional crash screening. We've also done some regional transit planning to assist Greater Glens Falls Transit. Yes?
Are you involved in that Empire Bike Trail thing that's going up through near the Canadian border?
Not directly. That's mostly a state-led initiative. The municipalities that it's traversing are actively involved in its planning.
But not as a planning board?
No, we're not directly involved in the funding. We have assisted with some of the implementation pieces when it comes to that, not necessarily with that facility, but regional facilities like that. There's been a couple of funding programs that have helped get the Warren County Bikeway done. We've done some improvements on the feeder canal trail as well, and we've previously programmed elements of the Champlain Canal for funding assistance as well, but those weren't carried forward. So past involvement, yes. Current involvement, no. These are some of the activities that we've completed on behalf of more than one municipality. Importantly, the Access Management Guidebook was an important informational tool for municipal planning boards. Again, the countywide crash screenings, the Transit Development Plan, some other smaller items of note, the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan. We're trying to encourage the municipalities to identify some efficiencies in their human services transport. We think we can extend the range and the effectiveness of those services with some improved coordination. Again, these are just sample work products that we typically entertain over the course of the year. What are we working on now? The long-range plan, again, is scheduled for completion this year. We're working on wrapping up a conceptual study to identify a bicycle and pedestrian connection between Halfway Brook and Hudson Point in the town of Queensbury. Also a conceptual extension of the Warren County Bikeway from Lake George to Warrensburg. Lots of bike ped stuff up there. A safety analysis for the town of Argyle that Chairman Henke had recently requested. We're just getting into the Village of Greenwich parking and pedestrian mobility study. I'm holding off on the bridge preservation and asset management strategy initiative. That's something that is potentially of great benefit to the county public works departments. We are kind of keeping that one at bay at the moment until we see some resolution on some of the cash flow issues. That's potentially a pricey endeavor that we want to not incur costs on right now. We have one in place that was done in 2014 that provides a sufficient amount of information, but the counties have asked that that be updated. We're also conducting traffic counts on county highway systems at the county's request. So those are some of the things that we're doing, some of the things that we've done. Any questions about the function of our organization? Al?
Aaron, two quick questions. One, can you let me know what your range of, you think you can afford some part-time planning? Do you have a handle on what those dollars might be? And it's okay if you say no at this time.
Okay. I can get you a number that I am more comfortable with very shortly, rather than spitting one out here.
And second question, say again who may host you. If you weren't hosted here, where else could you be hosted?
The other examples in New York are transit authorities. We don't have a transit authority here. The transit operator is in turn hosted by the city of Glens Falls, so that's not an option. The other small MPOs and some of the larger ones are single county. In those instances, those MPOs are hosted by that county.
And in those instances, the county is a sole county and not a region?
In most of those instances. I think there might be one exception. I think the Binghamton, which delightfully includes a piece of the state of Pennsylvania as well as more than one county in New York. That is a county-hosted organization, county-hosted MPO with more than one county. So yes, that's permissible. But the typical example is single county, single host.
Thank you.
The other option is New York State DOT, but again, this organization, Transportation Council, conscientiously moved away from that hosting area.
I got that clear.
In the late 90s, so it's an option. I didn't want to omit it as a scenario.
Thank you.
Ron?
Going forward, you represent 2/3 of the regional planning board budget, as you know, it's 400 and change or so, somewhere around there in the budget process. So it's very important that the expenditures and reimbursements take place in the most efficient way possible, especially for the host county.
If I can address that, I think that Aaron and Beth have been very good conversations. That DOT is required to make reimbursement within 15 days. We have found some of the processes we put in place were a little boggy for something like 6% of the budget, so they've made some changes to adopt that. We hope in the future to cut the time period down, probably 2 to 3 weeks before we can submit for reimbursement. So that will help substantially.
Oh, that's enormous.
Yeah, it's enormous. I mean, there's little things we've looked at and identified working with Beth, to some extent Aaron, but there, and I should say Al, that are big changes that will make a significant difference to the cash flows operation.
Beth and I have already, in my estimation, shaved a week off of the process just merely by addressing some staff inefficiencies that we think we can get a better handle on. Your approval of that MOU previous to this presentation partially allows for that as well by clarifying, you know, what's eligible and what's not eligible as far as expenses go. So we expect that to be much more efficient. But as Chairman O'Brien noted, at least in contemporary experience, DOT is not part of the issue here. That required 15-day reimbursement has been happening in most cases. So in the past, we could point a finger at that and say, we haven't had that for 6 months. That's a huge part of the problem. Not lately. But that's not stopping us from identifying additional opportunities to speed this up. We both had a look at the process. It's pretty clunky. We're mailing stuff back and forth when we could be emailing this stuff. We don't have to be. I think we're in good shape moving forward. Thank you.
Any other questions? We really appreciate it, Aaron. I like how I observed you and Beth working together and discussing things.
And
so thank you for that.
I, in turn, appreciate you folks rolling up your sleeves and providing some organizational stability for us.
Beth, I'll pass these out for you. So I said, I've asked Beth to put together what she would see as the vision for the future and why she thinks it's that way. Again, I want to say this is just a picture of what we do. It's not what we're going to adopt, but I think it's valuable to see, but based on her experience, what's available.
So as Dave noted, this is kind of just based on my experience. I have been employed at the Regional Planning Board for 10 years this September, working on the water quality program. A lot of things I'm going to talk about later in the presentation in terms of the vision are just things that I've seen other regional planning boards doing or things I've seen come across my desk that I've looked at and thought, wow, I wish I really had the time to get involved in this. I think it would be valuable for us. I think it would be valuable for our communities and our counties. So with that. So just, a quick outline. I'm going to highlight some of the things that were sent out in the 5-county services summary that went out in your informational package for the meeting. As I mentioned, go over the future vision a little bit, and then the way that I see that we may be able to obtain that vision, obviously in a phased-in process. So in 2017, we celebrated 50 years, and in that 50 years, the Regional Planning Board has infused over $40 million into the 5-county region through the various public and private programming that we offer. The first being our loan programs. We have 4 loan funds currently. 3 are within the Regional Planning Board, and they were financed by USEDA. And then there's the one that is in the Regional Development Court, which was funded by USDA. Just count as we're getting a handle on the loans. These are the number of loans that have been provided to each county since these were conceived in the mid-'80s. So 9 loans in Clinton County, 61 in Essex, 22 in Hamilton, 105 in Warren, and 40 in Washington. EDA implementation funding. So as a regional planning board, we have a key into EDA implementation funding for our 5-county region. In the past 50 years, we have brought in $19 million throughout the 5 counties in the various funding projects, a lot of industrial and business parks throughout the 5 counties. Water line constructions, road reconstructions, energy weatherization in a couple of the counties, civic center construction in Clinton County, and a lot of sanitary sewer assessments and extensions. The MS4 program, long story short with MS4, it is a state-mandated permit program for specific municipalities of a certain size. And actually, it goes hand in hand with the urbanized image that Aaron showed in his past presentation. So we have 10 MS4 communities within the region. They're Warren, Washington County, City of Glens Falls, Town of Queensbury, Kingsbury, Town and Village of Fort Edward, Village of Hudson Falls, and then all the county infrastructure within that urbanized area is also within the MS4. So as I mentioned, it is a permit program. The New York State DEC provides these communities a permit, and they have to comply with it based on various, they're called 6 minimum control measures, things they have to do: public education, public participation, illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction site runoff, post-construction site runoff, and improved municipal good housekeeping efforts. So the point, it is a water quality program. The point is to reduce non-point source pollution within stormwater. So the regional planning boards across New York State, since we're called Phase 2, which came in 2003. The town and village of Lake George were designated in 2013. They designate new areas with every census that comes. When the program was picked up for Phase 2 by the DEC, they asked the regional planning boards across New York State to assist these communities in complying with their MS4 permits. And so work that I specifically have done for this program for all of these communities is to author their stormwater management program plans, which are basically the outline of all the things they're going to do to stay in compliance with their MS4 permits, getting them up to speed with new permit requirements, assisting them with their annual reports. They have to file an annual report every year, and they also get audited by the DEC. So I've been present at all but one of the audits at the request of the municipalities to assist them with being audited by the DEC. I've procured a lot of grant funding for compliance, both planning and implementation. We provide a lot of the education and outreach materials for them, record keeping, illicit discharge efforts, educate municipal staff, especially the new ones that were brought into the program. I've spent a lot of time with the town and the village of Lake George in the last 3 years getting their program up and running and online, so they are in compliance, which they are. And liaisoning with the DEC on behalf of the municipalities. It's a very complex program. It includes a lot of staff from the DPW to code enforcement, and so it can get very confusing, especially for these smaller municipalities that don't actually have the staff to be able to do all of the work. So I kind of help between the DEC and the municipalities to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So stormwater work beyond the MS4 program, stormwater work across the 5 counties is a lot of the work that I do. In the past 10 years, written grants that have brought in $1.1 million in stormwater work in various municipalities throughout the 5 counties. Pictures up there, the city of Plattsburgh, Village of Lake George, Village of Hudson Falls. There's Silver Bay and Hague, small and large projects. Roadside erosion work is a lot of the work that I do, is getting money in to improve roadside erosion sites. So roadside erosion is bad for water quality because of sedimentation, the effects that it has on water quality and fisheries. Over the past 10 years, I've written grants that have brought in $1.5 million in roadside erosion work, and I just kind of listed out the towns within each of the counties where that work has been completed, in addition to the purchase of some equipment for the county soil and water districts to be able to improve their water quality programs with hydro seeding. Wastewater improvement funding. I think I mentioned at the last meeting, we're really involved with the Village of Fort Edward wastewater treatment plant updates. I wrote a grant for them for an engineering report. We provided funding to the town of Salem for a wastewater engineering report. I also have authored an engineering planning grant for Washington County Sewer District Number 2, and we've done some community septic pump out programs through various grants, although the state funding for those kind of septic pump out programs is waning. In ag improvement projects, I will be the first to tell you I don't do ag, but there was a very large pot of money from NRCS that they kind of created this grant program, which is not usually how they work. But in 2014, we applied for this grant, and actually 2 of them. One is in partnership with the state of Vermont, and then one is a New York grant that consists of 11 counties that cover the Adirondack Park. So $1.4 million is specifically the number that have gone into our 5 county areas throughout those, and I again listed just the kind of the work that's been done. So this was really great, especially for counties like Hamilton and Warren, whereas if there were producers in those counties that submitted to NRCS for funding, they generally wouldn't be funded because they can't compete statewide with the really large farms. But what we did in the way that we structured this program is that counties, within each county, the projects were competing with each other, and so each county was given a chunk of money, and people applied to the program and then went through the NRCS process and were approved or not, so that people putting up high tunnels in Indian Lake and Wells could get that funding to do that, whereas if they were competing against an ag waste storage in Clayton County, they never would have gotten that funding. So there's high tunnels going up in the city of Glens Falls. There's been some in Bolton, like George, Thurman, Warrensburg. And then, our heavy ag counties, Washington, Clayton County, is where you'll see the larger milk house waste and grazing and manure storage projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
You say you don't do ag. Are you working with soil and water?
Yeah.
Who are you working with to do that thing?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story. I was contacted by Vermont DEC and asked to go in on the dual state, if I could coordinate the New York people to go in Champlain watershed to go in on the dual state. And at first it didn't work out, so I was like, you know what? Whatever, I'll do my own. So I started with my 5-county soil and water, and in a day and a half that grew to 11 county soil and water conservation districts wanting to be involved, and that's why it ended up so large. And then Vermont came back and we worked things out, and now we have both of them, so it was a happy story for everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah. Plans, we do plans specifically, or at least in we work with others in the plans, but we have plans and have created and published plans that have listed, almost $200 million in funding needs for various reasons, water quality, infrastructure, and that kind of thing. So that was just a really quick overview of what we have provided to the counties over the last 50 years. I think this is a little maybe tongue-in-cheek. Our future vision is, the way I see it, is our roots. So what I did is I just took this out of general municipal law and highlighted some areas that we were created for a reason. A regional planning board was created for a reason. The reason is to do long-range protection, enhancement, growth, and development for our communities, both in public and private, to establish linkages between the communities and state and federal agencies and the grant funds that they have available, to do comprehensive planning, special studies, focus on opportunities and issues within our 5 counties. Citizen participation, I didn't get into it a lot here, but in the services summary I listed out a lot of the organizations, the lake associations, and the nonprofits that I work with on a daily basis to just move forward whatever their wants and needs are in their areas, and just a diversity of resources that exist, and to understand that and acknowledge that and see what we can do to improve anything in any area that our counties and our municipalities find to be important. So mission focused, promote economic development in the private sector, to work with municipalities to identify their needs, and not just stop there, but then to identify the funding to implement those needs. One thing I hear all the time is your plan sits on the shelf, and that drives me nuts. I don't create a plan so I can put it up on my bookshelf and pat myself on the back. Plans are created to be implemented. They're created to be used, especially now in the state funding climate, where when you're on a CFA application, there is that question that says, what plan is your project in? And that is 10 points. And so they're really looking for that. They, being funding agencies, state and federal, are looking for that work to have been done previously. And also to obtain and leverage federal funding for economic development, water quality, any kind of initiative that, again, our regions find to be important. So one step is, and Dave alluded to this a little bit earlier, is maximizing some of the programming that we already have within the organization. Some of that being the loan funds. As I mentioned, we have our loan funds through the Regional Planning Board and the Development Court. We have a management plan, as Dave mentioned, that's approved by EDA and how to operate. We've now got the development corp up in the ABO system, and we'll be complying with all of that. So I think that we can kind of continue our current level of programming. And if the opportunity comes along to recapitalize for any reason and reinvest, I think that that's something that we can, as a board, look into wanting to do or not. The Public Works and Economic Adjustment Assistance, so this is the EDA implementation funding that I was talking about earlier. Federal funds for construction, non-construction, any kind of technical assistance. They're $100,000 to $3 million projects. They kind of go hand in hand with our comprehensive economic development strategy, which I have updated the demographic information in. And once state grant season is over this Friday, one of my next initiatives is try to reconvene that public-private group that looks through the SEDS and makes that the determinations for the 5 counties. So I did do all the upfront, the demographic and all that has been updated with the newest census information, and then we'll hop on getting the back end up to speed. But I think we can do is work a little bit more closely with the regional economic development councils in the state. On broader ranges, I work with them on the water quality aspects, but there are many economic aspects. And really the reason for that is you've got all this state funding for economic development, and we have access to federal funding for economic development. And so you match state and federal, and everybody's happy. So I think that that's definitely a place that could be expanded upon in the future. And helping identify county planning departments with identifying and completing grant applications. I know everyone doesn't have a hugely staffed planning department, if they have one at all. So I would like you to be able to think of us as maybe an extension of your existing or non-existing planning department, just to assist you with things that you're looking to accomplish. Northern Borders Regional Commission funding. This is funding, it's federal funding, economic development funding, available to Clinton, Essex, and Hamilton counties within our specific 5-county region. There's a lot of different funding opportunities in that: infrastructure, telecommunications, there's workforce development. We work with the federal government on this, and also Department of State is kind of goes the feds to Department of State to us. I think that we can really capacity build in this program, and it's a win-win for a lot of reasons. The federal government is asking us to increase the application load coming from our region and coming from everywhere, so they can show an increased need, so they can go to Congress and ask for more money. They're not going to be able to ask for more money if they can't show that people really want it.
Question on that, the telecommunications, is that including governor's projects for broadband and stuff like that, supplementing that? Because there's certainly a ton of holes in his project. Or is that a different area than broadband?
No, it's broadband. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's not.
It can be all of the above. We
Right.
actually worked with Inlet this year to put in a application under the Northern Border Commission funding for a cell tower, just to build on the broadband, build on the fiber. It was going through and extend that to next generation telecommunications.
But what I've seen is, at least in my town and the adjoining towns, there's more Swiss cheese than solid in that thing. And there's an awful lot. Oh yeah, well that's just covered by Hughes. Well, Hughes is not really a desired alternative when there's certainly room for more expansion if there's a question of funding on it. So
We'll talk.
you will be involved in that. So thank you.
Yep. Yeah.
That's the answer I wanted to hear.
Applications for this year are closed. They should be awards announced around September time-ish. Next year's funding will be opened up around March. So we'll talk. Sure. So that's a perfect example. But why it's good for us as an organization as well is because we are the local development district, so we actually administer the grants, and we get money out of the grant funding to administer the grants. So it's a win-win, getting more money into our 5-county region, but also helping get administrative money into our organization. The water quality program, the MS4, as I mentioned before, do a lot of Department of Environmental Conservation, WQIP, Water Quality Improvement Program grants. We do Department of State LWRP, Local Waterfront Revitalization Program grants for watershed management planning, Facilities Corp for wastewater infrastructure, New England Interstate Water Pollution Control Commission puts a lot of funding into the Lake Champlain watershed. This is a program where we can really continue the current level of programming and then as needs arise, just kind of expand to those. Additional initiatives, as I mentioned, these are things that I'm seeing other regional planning boards in the state do or things that I've seen come across my desk that I wish I had the time to get involved in. And this is just kind of a list of plans that are being done elsewhere that I think would be really beneficial for our regions. Doing the development analysis, a lot of flood mitigation plans are out there, land use strategies, community strategic planning, kind of the whole gamut I think that we could get into if we had the staff to be doing this work. And then statewide initiatives into our 5-county region. There's a $2.5 billion Clean Water Infrastructure Act this year for water infrastructure improvements. Bridge New York is something that I would like to get involved in that we haven't. Same with Champlain Valley National Heritage Partnership, something I would like to get involved in, we haven't. So kind of the list goes on and on for possibilities. And again, it's really dependent upon what the counties and communities find as being important and things that they want to be involved in as well. So this is certainly for staffing kind of how this may potentially be realized. This obviously would be a phased approach. This is not happening tomorrow. But these are things that I see in terms of staff that I think could help get the organization to reach the vision that I just kind of outlined for you guys. So there would be an executive director doing the organizational guidance, also doing grant work. I think that's important. A senior planner, it would be probably like a senior environmental planner, and that would be the person that would be put into the water quality program. It's a program I've built. You can put a person in it tomorrow and they can just go forth and conquer with the work that's already out there. There's a lot of watershed management planning we have going on right now. Again, the water quality improvement projects that I outlined, those are continuously going on. MS4 is continuously going on. We do a lot of, again, another thing I didn't touch on, just to not bore you to death, but we provide a lot of professional training opportunities for engineers, landscape architects, code enforcement officers, zoning and planning administrators. So again, continuing that, and then working with the lake associations and the nonprofits that I work with. Another staff would be an economic development coordinator. They would be kind of the keeper of the SEDS, the keeper and the updater of our SEDS, overseeing the loan program, working on those federal and state grant initiatives for economic development that I mentioned, working with the communities to identify needs. And then, as Dave mentioned, a senior account clerk to be shared with AGFTC that would do basically the fiscal management, would be the contact for Warren County, work on some of the grant reimbursements, and do the office management duties. So budgeting, projected budget, projected 2019 budget was handed out for you guys to look at. 4 main points that I would like to make are where we are going to start maximizing our current grant funds that we already have. The way I look at it is the more staff we have writing grants, the more grant money is coming in, and that's a good thing. The more staff we have, there's also the less money going out for consulting fees. And then just kind of removing some ancillary operating expenses. So this is it, and I'm going to read off my sheet because I can't see that far even with my glasses. So as I said, I just want to make this very clear, projected 2019 phased-in approach. The salary for the director, right now we have a part-time director, or we did have a part-time director at $30,000. That would go up to a full-time director position. Our current secretary, office manager, as Dave mentioned, will be retiring soon, so filling that position with a senior account clerk to be shared with AGFTC. My thought is a 60% regional planning board, 40% AGFTC position. The assistant director position would not be refilled. We would hire a senior planner.
That's what, between the two agencies?
The senior account clerk. Yep.
No, and the senior planner?
I think Aaron brought that up today. I don't think we've had those conversations yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about shared.
That was a little,
sorry.
that was a little curveball, Aaron,
Yeah.
so.
No, there certainly is a prospect. We do a lot of transportation improvements with the roadside erosion and the stormwater, and Aaron and I, as Dave mentioned, have had really great conversations, not about just sharing staff, but just about working together more on the things that we're already doing and how they probably overlap a lot. And so it certainly is a potential, but not something we have talked through yet.
Okay.
And then the economic development coordinator in there, you know, the rest is just kind of the insurance, the workers' comp. I kept everything pretty much the same. The only difference you'll see is professional services for 2017. I would bring that down to 0 because the more staff doing the work, the less. That's money I spent hiring outside entities to do some work that if I had someone in-house doing that wouldn't have to be done. And the travel and training, you'll notice, goes up quite a bit because it really goes from 1.5 people to 2, potentially 3 people traveling and training. So if you look at the income, again, I didn't change the county allocations. The EDA planning grant, right now, we are only matching $35,000, but there is a way to reorganize some of the expenses so that we can maximize the match for the planning grant and get the $70,000 in. So that is certainly an initiative that we're looking at doing. The implementation grants, they could bring some administrative money in if someone's working on those. The water quality program would stay pretty steady with more people working on other water quality grant administration. That number can come up. And just some of the other things that we have going on, the interest from the loans, we would be able to carry the projected 2019 budget.
One question on that is that I don't know if people realize that 100% of Beth's time is paid, reimbursed for grants. As we continue on, whatever our duties end up being, that there will still be a lion's share of her time is reimbursed. Second thing is both those planner positions, whether they're shared or not, also have potential of being 100% compensated. So just want to let that know.
Yeah, a lot of grant money. I pulled out AGFTC's expenses and income out of our own because I think that's just a better way to look at the organizations. And just to make the point that really AGFTC, as Aaron mentioned, is 100% federal reimbursed. So AGFTC spends money, we get it back from DOT. They're not an expense at the end of the year for us. So I just didn't want it to skew the regional planning board's expenses so that you could see really what's going on in our office as well. So I put this in here, just teamwork makes the dream work. As I mentioned before, you know, the regional planning board has its own initiatives, we have our own programs, but I really do want the counties to be able to utilize us more. A lot of my time is spent going out and finding projects, and I would like that to be a 50-50 of you guys calling me and saying, hey, I have an idea, where do you think I could get it funded, or, you know, Laura's got 10 grants due in a month, can you help?
Careful what you wish for.
So, you know, we are available to you as the counties, and if you need us, please call.
So a couple notes, and Beth and I have talked about this in terms of future. We do intend to reach out more to the counties, especially our far-flung counties. So we think that's important, just to carry the message and make sure people are out there. So good. Any questions for Beth? Thank you for the excellent presentation, Beth.
Awesome.
So, at this point, we have a couple things to talk about in the executive session. I would entertain a motion to enter executive session to talk about the employment of employment matters of an individual or corporation. Al?
Mr. Chairman, you talked earlier about leaving some room for public comment. Did you want to do that before executive session? You're going to make them stick around if they have questions.
I would really like to get executive session done.
Okay.
Because there's people from far away, they got other commitments. I'm sorry for going this long. I promise you we won't do this again, but there was a lot to cover. I often say we're making up for the past 5 years. So, shouldn't say it that way. But I would invite any supervisor, with the permission of the board, any supervisor who's not on the committee to join us in executive session. With that, I would ask for a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Dennis, second.
Mr. Chairman?
You can't make any motion or...
No, but I have a request. Could we ask the Washington County Administrator to stay if that's appropriate?
If I'm going to ask that, I've got to ask Ryan to stay too, so...
I'm good with that.
Okay. So, thank you. Do I have a second? The second was Dennis. All in favor? Aye. So
Aye.
someone please close the door.
Do we have a contract with them? Is that, or
Yes, we have an engagement letter.
What is it?
Signed by both
A little
parties.
different.
30-day written notice kind of a thing?
I'm not sure that gives a termination there,
Something you have to work out.
but we will. So, our first order of business is I would like a motion to appoint, what's the name today? Beth as interim executive director at a salary of $70,000. Motion by Richie, second by John. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Carried.
Aye.
Also like permission to establish the title of senior account clerk. Move. And fill that position as soon as we can. Moved by John, second by Dennis. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Congratulations, Beth. So what we are also discussing is that Al has been very generous with his time. He's come up with a proposal that he thinks we can do the accounting more effectively and to save a substantial amount of money for the Regional Planning Board, which will give us good boost that we can get in-kind services, and the in-kind services will then allow us to go back and get some of that money that we're not getting, so, as part of the in-kind services. So, Al, would you sort of go through what your thought process is?
So I'll give the broad strokes because any commitment would have to come from my board as well. So let me just give that 10,000-foot view of what we're talking about. Instead of engaging a firm at $27,000, $28,000 to basically do bookkeeping, because that's what they're doing. You have an independent auditor for the stuff that you have to do independently. Mm-hmm. What I would offer is a county, to be determined in the near future, could offer accounting services to the Regional Planning Board, and even if there was a consideration given for those services, I guarantee you it wouldn't be or didn't need to be at that $27,000 level. What you could then do is take, if you're paying $27 and you're willing to pay a county $10, you've got $17,000 that Beth could then leverage or in kind. Because again, we're only making 35 of the 70,000 that she needs that we're just leaving on the table. So a county could offer accounting services to the Regional Planning Board, even if there was a compensation paid to that county. The delta between the compensation and what we're paying could be transferred to in-kind, then you're getting $1 back from EDA for time spent in kind from a county person. It's something to at least consider.
So, yes.
Because I'm a glutton for punishment, I can offer an additional thing that may sweeten the deal even more. As my board is well aware, I've been gnashing my teeth and saying unkind things about the governor for the shared services plan that I have to write by the end of this week. I had a brainstorm while we were sitting here earlier that under 239H, regional planning boards are considered a municipality. I don't know of an example where another county has included a shared services with a regional planning board in a shared services plan, but I see no reason why we couldn't do it. So, if we were to go with this and we were to say, okay, rather than pay SEFCU $28,000 a year, maybe the regional planning board pays Al's office $10,000 a year to do it. The regional planning board can claim $17,000 as an in-kind contribution to the $70,000 grant that you have to maximize. We'll put it in the shared services plan for Washington County, and then you should, unless the second floor really wants to be jerks, then you would get a check for $17,000 as well.
I'd like that money.
So, I guess what I would respectfully request is if the regional planning board decides to move forward with this, could you please include in your motion that you request this be included in the shared services plan submitted by Washington County?
Or whichever county does the third.
Dennis?
I didn't want to do that because Ryan would kill me if it ended up being Warren County and he had to put it in his plan. So that's why I said...
Not here, so...
Yes, so I said I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to add it to our plan.
So, did you have a question, Richie? Okay, we have a motion in a second. So, I want to specify what I feel the motion should be. First of all, I think the motion should be that the regional planning board concurs with investigating this and talking with Al and putting together an agreement to do this, or excuse me, whatever county we decide, do that. I think that I would also ask that because we need to look at this earlier, that we ask that, I don't know if I or the executive board, the executive committee be given permission, if that's correct, to execute this agreement and move forward with it. So I guess that's my motion, however you want to put it. And wait a minute, I forgot one thing. Shared services that we included in the shared services plan.
That's what I meant to say.
Oh, thank you, Dennis. You read my mind. Matt, you had a question.
Who's the executive board?
Executive board are the 4 officers.
Who are the 4 officers?
That's the next item of business.
Oh, okay. It's just you right now.
Well, no, actually, it's me and Beth. And
That's not me.
Beth Hunt, right.
yeah, Beth Hunt. Okay, authorize me to sign the contract. Is that your motion, Richie?
No, it's Dennis's motion.
Or Dennis' motion, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Was that your motion, Dennis?
Oh, yes.
Do I have a second? Second by Richie. All in favor?
Aye.
Al?
Chairman, I just want to mention that I'm going to be preparing a proposal for my board. If they bless that proposal, I'll be sending that proposal to the regional planning.
Thank you. Won't be long for you to just pass it over to me. So anyhow, the next order of business is in our new adopted bylaws today. Number 1, it expands the duty of treasurer. Currently, the treasurer is only signing checks. I would like a motion to look at appointing a treasurer who can satisfy the requirements of the new bylaws. I have a preference, but I will say that Al has been very conscientious of this, so I would like to have consideration. I will say that Warren County is already doing a part of the shared services, and part of the shared services is they're doing paychecks, employees, civil service, so they are putting in quite a bit. And also Ryan is I got Ryan on speed dial.
We talk every day, right?
He changed his phone call. So, yes.
I hate to be a fly in the ointment. let's just say, I know we didn't name it, but I'm going to assume since he's the treasurer and I'm the admin here who volunteered, if Washington County ends up doing the bookkeeping, it kind of feels like it would be better to have not have Al be the treasurer. Just, not that I think Al would do anything wrong, I just feel like it would, separation of powers is probably a good thing in this case given what got us here. My 2 cents.
And for what it's worth, I asked the same question.
I think I said something way back when we first talked about it too.
Well, you had a good answer, I just don't remember it.
Doesn't have very often.
I don't remember what the answer was, but I do think one of the things to take consideration, and now we're requiring 2 officers to sign checks, that there was a distance issue with having Clinton County or someone else do that. So I think that was my answer, wasn't it?
Well, and I think that the role of the agency's treasurer was kind of what the bookkeeper should be doing for you all now. I think we saw a lot of, it was the same duty, just different tasks. I mean, you do need a separation. I think your senior account clerk might be able to provide some of that separation.
Well, see, as part of the role I see, whichever county does this, is we need systems procedures. I asked the question of SEPCO of, I need information sooner than that. And, of course, the answer is, well, yeah, but my bills will always going to go up. So I don't think this organization can exist in the short term based on quarterly accounting reports and not being able to see what's going on. So I think we need some way to put in place the systems, procedures that the senior account clerk does some of this stuff. But I think see the important role of putting these procedures and processes in place. That's where I see the important role.
I also think that one of the things that I wasn't entirely clear on, my county involvement in doing the books for the agency is a extremely short-term measure to, for lack of a better term, right the ship. I think that I think that I see a horizon where those duties are transferred back to somewhere else. I think the county solution is a short-term solution to get things back under control. When the agency becomes self-sufficient, self-sustaining, the financials are a little bit stronger, the cash position is a little bit stronger, I can see those duties going back, maybe even to that senior counselor, wherever. I just want to be clear that I think my proposal is going to be a short-term proposal. I just want to be clear on that.
Well, I did understand that. I think this is a time where we need to dig in, and I don't know, it's up to the board. I would just, knowing the amount of work that has to be done, go from there.
There is overall audit control on this too, isn't there? I mean, end of the year independent audit?
Yes, Marvin and Company
So
provides
I think
independent
that
audit.
provides a hope fail-safe. Was there a motion, Tim?
We have a
I did not
motion,
hear
there's
a motion.
something on the floor.
I know that Walter resigned and we elected you last meeting as the chairman. We have existing officers that were elected in January. Did they have to resign, or
Well,
how are we handling
our bylaws, the 2 officers that changed are the vice chair and the treasurer. The treasurer has to be an ex officio member of the board. The vice chair has to be a voting member.
No,
The treasurer does not have, he doesn't have to.
Doesn't have to be, okay, well, it doesn't have to be, but, so anyhow, Mike Diskin is an ex officio member, so hence can't be vice chair.
I was just concerned if we had existing officers, what are we doing with them?
Lou Tessier turned 90 yesterday, but the
No,
duty,
no longer a member.
he has been a member for some years, and pardon? I've had discussions with the auditor, who feels that it's not appropriate to have him as treasurer. By the way, I had discussion with Actually, when I was talking to the auditor, Bob Elliott, I wanted to have that discussion because both Al and I want to have a discussion with him. He actually brought it up. He recommended looking at one of the counties to take over part of it, and maybe even at certain point switching it around. But that's what's put in place. So Matt, sorry.
So currently, you're the chairman from Washington County, and Beth Hunt is the secretary from Hamilton County.
Correct.
Do we still leave in the bylaws that the other two officers should be from 2 other counties? Did we leave that in there?
We left it, we could have a maximum of 2 officers from one county.
Okay. So you're looking for a vice chair and a treasurer, right?
Yes.
Preferably, in a perfect world, they would come from one of the other counties.
So,
I don't know, I'm just going to push things along.
where does the board want to go?
What is Al's title?
Al Sider is treasurer of Washington County.
I'm comfortable nominating Al as the treasurer for the board.
I have a nomination. Do I have a second? You can't second it. We've learned this. I need a second before discussion.
You never need a second.
Second. Do I have a second? Edna?
Yeah.
All right, Al?
And if you want to make the motion contingent on Mr. Elliott blessing that separation of duties when we talk to him tomorrow, that's fine.
I heard that's what you said.
Okay.
Wasn't Edna?
Yes.
Or, no, it was Pete made that motion. I have a motion. I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So we'll deal from there. Vice chair. That can wait till next time. We're losing members from it, but I'm just asking, should we look for a nomination or not? I'm just opening up the floor. Do we want to wait and talk to the other counties? I'm fishing. Al?
Dave, did you leave it, so did you get the blessing of this board to allow the executive committee to make an action, really?
Actually, it was the chair.
Just the chair?
We change it to just the chair.
Okay, because if you leave the vice chairman open, and I submit a proposal for accounting services, and I'm the treasurer, have to recuse myself, we have a problem. I just want to make sure that you're good.
We can default to Mike Diskin until we make another choice. Is that all right with people? I don't care which way we go.
Well, Mike Dixon's an ex officio member. The bylaws say it has to be a voting member.
Well, we might want something that's the vice chairman.
I can't argue with that.
Yeah, but we're going to operate
Yeah, I mean, the spirit and
Do I have any emotions here today?
Any volunteers from the screen?
Rodney, Pete?
I say we put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
I think that's
Good
a
idea.
to reach out. All right. I need a motion to authorize myself to sign the resolution to the bank signatures. Will be myself.
I'll make that motion.
Al, Beth, and Beth Hunt, or Beth Giles will be also on this. Need two signatures. So motion by, who's that, Rodney or Pete?
Pete.
Pete made the motion. Do I have a second? Second by Dennis. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. I don't have anything else. I'm tired.
Move to adjourn.
Second. Aye.
Any comments from the floor? Questions?
You want our name tags back?
Yes. We got to save money.
For next time.
So I do want to thank you for your efforts. I will tell you this has been an experience, and I don't think the experience is done yet.
next time we start earlier,
So,
you feed us lunch.
right now we got you and...
Next time we start earlier and you feed us lunch.
Al, and we...
ABO said we can't do that.
So I'm just looking at who can sign checks at this point.
Myself, Beth, Al,
That's
Beth.
enough?
There's some process.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta head
All we get by for now.
Okay. Thank you all. I really appreciate your time.